the grand Armada of the Xylosian Concordance, an aggregation of stellar might known throughout the surveyed galaxy as the Iron Vanguard, drifted into the outer reaches of the Sol system. 10,000 vessels, from the smallest skirmishers to the colossal sovereign-class dreadnoughts, spread across the dark canvas of space, a shimmering tapestry of power. On the bridge of the Concordance flagship, the Imperious Ascent, Admiral Kyleran surveyed the tactical holoscreen, his multi-jointed limbs clicking softly against the polished console. His primary optical cluster, a complex array of light-sensing organs, narrowed. This newly discovered species, the Sol Collective, was primitive. Their star maps were crude, their energy signatures weak, their defensive grids non-existent outside their primary star system. They posed no threat, merely another minor civilization awaiting integration into the Concordance. "Transmit the standard assimilation edict," Kyleran commanded, his voice a low, resonant rumble that echoed the might of his fleet. "Inform the Sol Collective of their imminent inclusion into the Concordance's glorious dominion. Resistance is counterproductive." The communications officer, a smaller Xylosian with perpetually twitching antennae, swiftly executed the order. A moment of silence stretched across the bridge, broken only by the hum of the ship's massive engines. Then, the response. It wasn't the frantic pleas for mercy Kyleran expected, nor the desperate defiance of doomed warriors. It was a single, concise transmission. "Acknowledged. Sending envoy." Kyleran's optical cluster swiveled towards his strategic advisor. "Envoy. They send an envoy to 10,000 warships." He emitted a sound that, for a Xylosian, indicated amusement. Do they truly believe a single diplomatic vessel will alter the inevitable? The advisor, a grizzled veteran of 100 pacifications, merely shrugged his segmented shoulders. "Perhaps they misunderstand the scale of our presence, Admiral, or perhaps it is a final, desperate gesture." Moments later, a faint blip appeared on the long-range scanners. It resolved into a solitary vessel, small, sleek, and utterly unthreatening. It bore no visible weaponry, no heavy shielding, nothing to suggest it was anything more than a glorified courier. Its design was elegant, almost organic, a stark contrast to the utilitarian brutality of the Concordance fleet. "What is that?" Kyleran scoffed, leaning closer to the display. "A civilian shuttle. They are either deluded or profoundly foolish." The human vessel, identified as the Unifier, continued its steady, unwavering course directly towards the heart of the Iron Vanguard. It ignored all hails from the Concordance fleet, all attempts to divert it. It simply came. "Open a direct channel," Kyleran ordered, a hint of irritation in his voice. "Demand their intentions. Warn them they are violating a secure perimeter." The comms officer tried, but the Unifier remained silent, its trajectory unaltered. It was now well within the outermost defensive screen of the Iron Vanguard, a network of interlinked energy fields designed to vaporize any hostile inbound. Yet, the human ship passed through the screen as if it didn't exist, causing not even a flicker in the Xylosian defenses. A ripple of unease spread across the Imperious Ascent's bridge. This was unexpected. "Analysis now," Kyleran barked, his amusement having evaporated. "What are its energy signatures? Is it cloaked, a new form of stealth?" The sensor technician's tendrils twitched. "Negative, Admiral. No cloaking field detected. No unusual energy readings. It is simply moving. Its power output is negligible, barely enough to maintain atmospheric integrity." "Impossible!" As the Unifier continued its serene journey, passing directly between two sovereign-class dreadnoughts, something began to happen. It was subtle at first. On the colossal warship Vengeance of Xylos, the primary energy conduits flickered. Then, a low hum became a high-pitched whine. Before anyone could react, the ship's shields, monumental barriers capable of deflecting planetary bombardments, simply winked out of existence. Admiral, Vengeance of Xylos reports shield failure, complete power loss to defensive arrays. A comms officer cried out, his voice laced with alarm. Kylaren's optical cluster widened. What? Is it a weapon? Where is the energy signature? None, sir. No weapon discharge detected from the human vessel. Then the Vengeance of Xylos began to list. Its massive thrusters, usually burning with controlled fury, sputtered into silence. Auxiliary lighting died. In moments, the mighty dreadnought was nothing more than a colossal, inert hulk drifting helplessly. "Contact the Vengeance," Kylaren commanded, a cold dread beginning to seep into his core. "Report!" "Static!" Then silence. And the Unifier continued its path, a silent, unassuming needle threading its way through the tapestry of the Iron Vanguard. As it passed the glory of Varkos, another dreadnought, the same impossible scenario unfolded. Lights flickered, shields evaporated, engines died. Then, the glory of Varkos began to crumple, not from an explosion, but as if an invisible hand was squeezing it, collapsing its internal structure into a chaotic mess of twisted metal. No blast, no debris field, just a slow, horrifying implosion that left behind only a strangely pristine void where the ship had been. Panic erupted on the bridge of the Imperious Ascent. "Admiral, we're losing contact with multiple vessels. Ship after ship is going dark. No distress signals, no explosions, they're just stopping." Kylaren stared at the tactical display, his limbs locked in place. Icons representing his proud fleet were vanishing, one by one, not turning red with damage, but simply disappearing from the screen. A wave of profound, bone-chilling terror washed over him. This wasn't warfare. This was something else. This was unraveling. On a distant, hidden station orbiting a gas giant in the inner Sol system, Commander Aris Thorne watched the real-time sensor feed with an expression of quiet intensity. His graying hair was neatly combed, his uniform immaculate. Beside him, a young, nervous operations specialist named Kale shifted in his seat. "The Xylosians are panicking," Kale murmured, his voice tight. "They don't understand." Aris nodded, his gaze fixed on the display showing the rapid cessation of Xylosian vessels. "Of course not. Their entire martial philosophy is built on brute force, on the application of overwhelming energy and kinetic impact. They understand cause and effect within a narrow, predictable framework." "But the Unifier isn't doing anything, sir," Kale ventured, his eyes wide. "No energy spikes, no FTL fluctuations, no weapon signatures. How is it doing that?" Aris finally tore his gaze from the screen, turning to Kale with a faint, almost regretful smile. "Because the Unifier isn't a weapon, Kale. It's an interface. It's demonstrating a principle. The Xylosians have conquered vast swaths of the galaxy, yes, but they did so by pushing against resistance. They never truly explored the fabric of reality itself, never sought the fundamental why of existence. Humanity, born from a harsh world where every why meant survival, where every constraint forced innovative solutions, learned to look deeper." He gestured back to the screen where the last few Xylosian vessels were now falling silent. They build their ships and their empire on layers of assumptions. The Unifier is simply removing those assumptions, one by one. It's not defeating them, Kale. It's showing them the underlying fragility of their reality, the unaddressed complexities beneath their perceived strengths. Back on the Imperious Ascent, Admiral Kylaren felt the ship lurch. Power flickered on his own bridge. The main viewscreen shimmered, then went dark. Emergency lighting cast long, dancing shadows. "Admiral, we are losing internal stability," a frantic officer cried. "The main reactor core is failing. Containment fields are collapsing." Kylaren staggered, grasping a console for support. His optical cluster swiveled wildly, searching for something, anything, to make sense of the catastrophe. He saw the Unifier, a distant, placid speck, now turning away from the annihilated fleet, heading back towards the Sol system. It was pristine, untouched, radiating nothing but the calm hum of its minimal systems. Then, a final, clear transmission echoed across the Xylosian fleet's rapidly failing comms. It was not in Xylosian, but in the common galactic tongue, spoken with a strange, calm cadence. Understanding is the first step. Then, the imperious ascent finally ceased to be. Not with a bang, but with a silent, internal unraveling, as if its very existence was gently, yet definitively, unwritten from the cosmic ledger. The Xylosian imperial capital, Xylos Prime, was a planet-spanning metropolis of gleaming spires and interconnected energy conduits. Deep within its core, in the Hall of Perpetual Command, Emperor Varkos sat upon his obsidian throne. His massive form, usually radiating an aura of unwavering authority, was now slumped, his multifaceted eyes wide with incomprehension. Around him, his grand counselors, military strategists, and scientific luminaries bickered, their voices a cacophony of fear and confusion. 50,000 vessels, gone without a trace. No wreckage, no energy signatures, just an empty void where the Iron Vanguard once stood. The Supreme Fleet Master, a formidable Xylosian warrior named General Thol, slammed a segmented fist onto a holographic table, making the projected star charts shimmer. "It's an impossibility, a fabrication. No known force could accomplish this." "But the scout ships confirmed it, General," cried a scientist, his voice trembling. "Their sensor logs are irrefutable. Every ship simply ceased to exist." Emperor Varkos raised a heavy-clawed hand, silencing the chaotic debate. His voice, usually thunderous, was a low rasp. "What did they say? The human transmission?" A communications aide, looking utterly bewildered, activated a small holodisplay. The translated words appeared in luminous script. "Understanding is the first step." "Understanding?" General Thol scoffed. "Understanding of what? How to unleash some arcane superweapon that defies physics? They are mocking us?" "Perhaps not," interjected a reclusive scholar, Archlibrarian Rylos, a being whose knowledge of ancient galactic phenomena was unparalleled. He adjusted the intricate lenses over his numerous eyes. "The reports state there was no weapon, no energy discharge, no conventional attack. It was as if the very fabric of their ships, their crews, their existence was gently untangled. Like a thread pulled from a tapestry, leaving no hole, just an absence." A shudder ran through the room. This was not defeat. This was an annihilation of a different kind, one that struck at the very root of their understanding of the universe. The Concordance had faced empires that could shatter planets, fleets that could blacken suns, but never anything that could simply erase. "We must find them," Emperor Varkos finally declared, his voice regaining a fraction of its former steel. "We must dispatch a reconnaissance fleet, not to attack but to observe, to comprehend. What are these humans? And what understanding do they possess that renders our might so utterly irrelevant?" General Thol looked uncertain. "A reconnaissance fleet? My Emperor, after such an event, our warriors, their morale is shattered. They whisper of ancient evils, of entities from the void." "Then we will learn," Varkos stated, his eyes now fixed on the blank space on the star map where the Sol system lay, a system that now seemed to hum with an unsettling, unknown power. "We will learn what they are, and we will learn what understanding truly means for a species that can make an entire armada simply vanish." He knew, deep in his core, that the Xylosian Concordance, once the undisputed masters of galactic conquest, had just encountered something far, far beyond their comprehension. And the chilling part was, the humans had only sent one ship, just one, and it had been more than enough. The silence of the void where his fleet had been was a deafening testament to that fact. Hope you enjoyed this first dive into the story. What do you think the Xylosians will discover about humanity's understanding? Let us know your theories in the comments below, and don't forget to like this video and subscribe for the next part of this epic saga. Where are you watching from? The reconnaissance fleet, a meticulously curated collection of 1,000 vessels, slipped through the void. Unlike the previous Armada, these ships were bristling with advanced sensor arrays, deep space probes, and every diagnostic instrument the Xylosian Concordance could muster. There were no dreadnoughts, no carriers, only highly specialized cruisers and frigates, each crewed by the Concordance's finest scientists, strategists, and a smattering of highly decorated but utterly bewildered military personnel. Admiral Raxus, a stoic Xylosian renowned for his analytical mind, commanded the expedition from the bridge of the observation vessel, the Truth Seeker. He had witnessed the horrifying final moments of the Iron Vanguard's eradication via encrypted reports, a chilling sequence of events that still haunted his rest. "Status report," Raxus rumbled, his voice low, his optical clusters fixed on the swirling nebula that marked the outer edge of the Sol system. They were approaching the exact coordinates where the previous fleet had been unmade. "All systems nominal, Admiral," replied Commander Jarth, the operations chief, his mandibles clicking with barely concealed tension. "Passive scans detect no anomalies. The Sol system appears as mapped, primitive, unfortified, just as predicted before the incident." Raxus nodded. The official concordance line was the incident. No one dared utter the annihilation or the erasure. The psychological impact on the Empire had been immense. Whispers of a new galactic power, perhaps even an elder race, had spread like a contagion through the Xylosian populace. The Emperor himself, Varkos, had been seen pacing the hall of perpetual command for days, a behavior unheard of in his long reign. "Keep all energy signatures to minimal levels," Raxus ordered. "No active scans unless authorized. We are here to observe, not to provoke." Days turned into a week as the fleet cautiously advanced, creeping through the asteroid fields and minor planetary orbits of the Sol system's outer reaches. The humans, or Sol Collective as they were formerly known, remained silent. No patrols, no defensive beacons, not even a single automated probe greeted them. It was unnervingly quiet. "They're not reacting to our presence, Admiral," Jarth noted, a tremor in his voice. "It's as if they don't care, or they don't perceive us as a threat. Or they perceive us as something else entirely," Raxus countered, a cold knot tightening in his core. He remembered the last transmission from the Unifier. Understanding is the first step. What did they understand? What did they know that the Xylosian Concordance, with all its millennia of accumulated knowledge and power, did not? The fleet eventually reached the inner system, settling into a wide, clandestine orbit around the gas giant of Jupiter. Its colossal, swirling storms offered ample cover, and from this vantage they could conduct long-range observations of the third planet, the Sol Collective's primary world. Earth! Begin detailed analysis of the primary world's energy grid, communications network, and atmospheric composition, Raxus commanded. Look for anything unusual, any hidden constructs, any exotic energy signatures, anything that might explain that single ship. For weeks, the Xylosian scientists worked tirelessly. Their findings were baffling. Earth was indeed a Category 3 civilization by all conventional metrics. Its technology, while advanced by its own standards, was utterly mundane by galactic benchmarks. No exotic power sources, no reality-bending devices, no secret superweapons. Their communications were mostly for entertainment or commerce. Their orbital defenses were rudimentary, clearly designed for internal threats or minor pirate raids, not a galactic-tier invasion. "It makes no sense," exclaimed Dr. Xyler, the lead xenoscientist, his multi-jointed arms flailing in frustration. Their entire civilization, their technological footprint, indicates absolutely no capacity for the phenomena we observed. It's as if the ship that eradicated the Iron Vanguard was an anomaly, an impossibility. But it happened, Raxus reminded him, his voice flat. 50,000 ships, Doctor, gone. Yes, Admiral, but how? Xyler pressed. There's no signature, no residual energy, nothing to suggest a weapon or even a power source capable of such an effect. We've run every simulation, every theoretical model. It breaks every known law of physics, every axiom of universal constants. Suddenly, an alarm blared on the bridge. Admiral, unidentified energy signature, multiple ships. Raxus snapped to attention. Origin! Everywhere, sir. It's permeating the entire fleet. It's not a burst, it's a frequency. A pervasive field, the sensor officer stammered, his antennae vibrating wildly. Analysis? What is it? Unknown, Admiral. It's shifting, it's modulating, it's interacting with our internal systems. Not just the ships, sir. My diagnostic tools are showing interference with the crew's biosign. The officer cut off with a gasp, clutching his head. Others on the bridge began to sway, their optical clusters darting erratically. A low, persistent hum filled the air, a sound that seemed to vibrate not through the speakers, but directly within their very bones. Report! Raxus roared, gripping his command console as the deck plates beneath him began to thrum. It's not an attack, Admiral, Dr. Xyler cried out, his voice strained, a strange look of awe and terror on his face. It's a query. It's examining us. On the tactical display, ghostly green lines began to appear, tracing invisible pathways through the Xylosian ships. They pulsed with an eerie, rhythmic beat. These weren't energy beams or targeting locks. They were analytical. It's dissecting our schematics, screamed a bridge technician, his voice hoarse. My console is displaying internal power flows, structural integrity reports, even crew manifest data. It's accessing everything. A cold, horrifying realization dawned on Raxus. This wasn't a weapon. It was an intelligence. One that was not only observing them, but understanding them on a level that transcended conventional warfare. The human ship hadn't defeated the Iron Vanguard. It had merely demonstrated the Xylosian fleet's inherent lack of cohesion at a fundamental level. Now, something else was taking a deeper look. Seal all internal networks, initiate emergency firewall protocols, Raxus ordered, though he knew it was futile. The pervasive green lines pulsed, growing brighter, seeming to penetrate through the very hull of the Truth Seeker. Then, the data began to stream onto the main view screen, replacing the star field with a horrifying display of Xylosian military secrets. Ship designs, weapon specifications, strategic weaknesses, even the genetic predispositions of Xylosian physiology. All laid bare. It wasn't being downloaded or hacked in any conventional sense. It was as if the data itself was being mirrored from their minds, their systems, into this alien query. Admiral, it's showing us ourselves, Commander Jarth gasped, pointing a trembling limb at the screen. A schematic of a Xylosian dreadnought appeared, then faded, replaced by a complex biological diagram of a Xylosian brain. Then, a series of mathematical equations that were utterly alien, yet somehow resonated with the displayed data. Raxus felt a strange, intrusive sensation in his own mind. Not pain, but an overwhelming influx of information, a sudden, inexplicable knowing of things he had never learned. He saw the intricate energy pathways of his own vessel, the precise calibrations of its warp core, the subtle flaws in its shielding. He saw the anxious thoughts of his crew members, their fears, their hopes. It was overwhelming, intimate, and profoundly violating. It's not trying to fight us, Xyler whispered, his eyes wide with a mixture of terror and enlightenment. It's trying to understand us, and in doing so, it's showing us how little we understand ourselves. The green lines pulsed faster, the hum intensified. Xylosian ships across the fleet began to broadcast their own internal data involuntarily. Their comms channels were flooded with schematics, tactical doctrine, historical records. not as a coordinated attack, but as a spontaneous, horrifying self-disclosure. The fleet was literally pouring out its collective knowledge into the void. Then, on the main view screen, among the deluge of Xylosian data, a new image materialized. It was a projection of a human face, serene and calm. No sound accompanied it, but somehow Raxus felt a presence, a consciousness, observing him directly. The face morphed, showing different expressions, different ages, different genders. Each one radiated a quiet, profound curiosity. This wasn't a warning. This was an analysis. A final image solidified on the screen, a complex holographic projection of a human brain, its neural pathways glowing with intricate, dynamic light. Beside it, flowing lines of text in the common galactic tongue appeared, translating the alien equations that had been shown earlier. The Xylosian concordance is built on an understanding of how things interact, the words read, appearing not through a transmission, but as if etched directly onto the screen by an unseen hand. Power is applied, force is exerted, causality is linear. This framework, while robust for your expansion, fundamentally limits your perception of the universe's true nature. More text appeared, superimposed over the glowing human brain. Humanity, forged on an extreme environment world, was forced to adapt to a reality that defied easy answers. When the laws of physics themselves seem to conspire against our survival, we learn to seek the deeper patterns, the underlying principles that govern those laws. We learn to ask why those laws existed, not just how they functioned. Raxus felt the pervasive hum intensify once more, and a dizzying rush of sensation overwhelmed him. He felt as if he was being pulled apart, not physically, but conceptually. He understood, with terrifying clarity, the flaws in Xylosian warp drive efficiency, the inherent instability in their energy weapon designs, the fundamental entropy within their entire society's organizational structure. It was as if his very being was being run through a cosmic diagnostic, its limitations and potential laid bare. Then the text changed again. The unifier was not a weapon, it was a conceptual probe. It simply demonstrated the disconnect within your previous fleet's perceived reality. It showed them that their assumptions about existence were flawed. When those assumptions were removed, the constructs built upon them simply ceased to hold together. The projected human brain on the screen seemed to pulse, and Raxus felt a deep, almost painful expansion in his own mind. He was seeing the universe differently, seeing the interwoven threads of causality, energy, and consciousness in a way he never had before. It was beautiful, terrifying, and utterly alien. Your current reconnaissance fleet, the text continued, is being subjected to a deeper level of this understanding. Your data streams, your thoughts, your very biological processes are being analyzed, not for vulnerability, but for coherence. We are not here to wage war, Xylosian. We are here to ascertain whether you are capable of understanding. The green lines on the tactical display began to retract, slowly fading away. The humming subsided, leaving only a profound, echoing silence. The involuntary data streams ceased. The intrusive knowing began to recede from Raxus's mind, leaving him feeling simultaneously enlightened and utterly exhausted. "Admiral," Commander Jarth whispered, his voice hoarse, his optical clusters still wide with shock. "What just happened?" Raxus stared at the view screen. The human face was gone. The text had vanished. Only the star field remained, but it looked different now, sharper, more profound. "They didn't attack us, Jarth," Raxus murmured, his voice laced with an emotion he couldn't name. They opened us up. They showed us ourselves." Then a final transmission, originating from the very heart of the Sol system, echoed through the now-calm Xylosian comms. It was a single, simple image, a perfect, luminous circle, pulsating gently. Below it, in the common galactic tongue, two words appeared. "Are you?" The question hung in the void, a challenge not of strength, but of consciousness. Raxus knew, with a certainty that chilled him to his core, that the Xylosian concordance had not merely faced a more powerful foe. They had faced a species that operated on an entirely different plane of existence, one that redefined the very nature of reality itself. And the reconnaissance fleet, meant to gather information, had instead been comprehensively studied. Their every secret laid bare, their very essence analyzed. His optical clusters narrowed, fixed on the distant, seemingly primitive blue world. Earth. The humans had not sent a ship this time. They hadn't needed to. They had merely extended their understanding. And the terrifying thought that now clawed at his mind was, what would happen if the Xylosians failed to provide the correct answer to the human's simple, yet profound, question? What did our you truly imply for the future of the Xylosian concordance? If you thought the Xylosians' first encounter was baffling, this one truly redefines too close for comfort. Did humanity just invent a galactic-scale brain scan? What do you think the luminous circle means? Drop your theories in the comments below. And don't forget to like and subscribe so you don't miss part 3, where we find out if the Xylosian concordance can really understand. The return of Admiral Raxus's reconnaissance fleet to Xylos Prime was not triumphant. It was a silent, solemn procession of vessels scarred not by battle, but by an invisible, invasive encounter. The 1,000 ships, pristine in their hull integrity, carried crews that were profoundly altered. Many Xylosian officers and scientists returned with a strange, distant look in their multifaceted eyes, as if they had gazed into a fundamental abyss and found their own reflections wanting. Admiral Raxus himself, usually a beacon of stoicism, appeared aged beyond his years. His report to Emperor Varkos in the Hall of Perpetual Command was delivered with a quiet gravity that chilled the assembled counselors more effectively than any declaration of war. "My Emperor," Raxus began, his voice devoid of its usual resonant authority, "we were not attacked. We were analyzed, profoundly." He detailed the pervasive frequency, the intrusive query that had permeated their ships and minds, the involuntary torrent of Xylosian data that had been siphoned into the void. He described the projected human face, the calm curiosity, and the final, unsettling question. "They stripped us bare, my Emperor," Raxus concluded, his optical clusters fixed on the shimmering throne. "Every secret, every weakness, every thought, it was laid open, not for attack, but for what they called coherence. They sought to ascertain whether we are capable of understanding." A tense silence filled the vast hall. General Thol, the Supreme Fleet Master, was visibly agitated. "This is an invasion of the mind, a violation beyond any act of war. We must retaliate, mobilize every remaining fleet, burn their world to cinder." Emperor Varkos raised a hand, silencing the general's outburst. "With what, Thol?" The Iron Vanguard was erased by a conceptual probe. This reconnaissance fleet was illuminated. What weapon, what strategy, could possibly confront a species that operates on such a level? Archlibrarian Rylos, ever the contemplative one, adjusted his lenses. The humans speak of understanding as a key to their capabilities. They claim their extreme environment origins forced them to look beyond the superficial, to seek the underlying principles that govern the universe's laws. This is not about technological advancement, my Emperor. It is about a fundamental difference in cognitive approach. A cognitive approach that makes 50,000 warships vanish, scoffed a senator from the Imperial Senate, his voice dripping with disbelief. "Perhaps," Rylos countered, "their understanding allows them to interact with the universe on a level we perceive as magic or impossible. Their unifier did not shatter our ships with force, but rather by demonstrating the fragility of our assumptions about their structure. When the Xylosian concept of shipness was challenged at its root, the ship simply ceased to be. The concept was terrifying in its simplicity. It implied that the Xylosian concordance, with all its power, was built on a foundation of fragile, potentially incorrect, assumptions. Emperor Varkos rose from his throne. Then we must achieve this understanding. If it is the key to their power, it must be the key to our survival. Raxus, you and your scientists will lead this endeavor. Study every nuance of their query, every fragment of information they expose to you. Decode their equations. Discover their underlying principles. My Emperor, Raxus stated, a profound weariness in his voice. I fear their understanding is not something that can be reverse-engineered or merely studied. It is something to be attained, a paradigm shift, and I am not certain we are capable of it. Then you will become capable, Varkos commanded, his voice hardening. The future of the Concordance depends on it. Discover what are you truly means and how to answer it. Thus began the Concordance's most desperate and intellectually challenging endeavor. Zyros 9, once a hub for weapon development, transformed into a sprawling research complex dedicated to human understanding. Scientists from across the Concordance, many of them veterans of Raxus's fleet, toiled tirelessly. They analyzed the data from the query, ran endless simulations, and tried to decipher the alien mathematical equations that had briefly appeared on their screens. Their initial attempts were met with frustration. The human equations defied their conventional physics. They seemed to describe reality not as a series of forces and reactions, but as a fluid, interconnected network of probabilities and concepts. It's like trying to understand a symphony by analyzing the vibrations of individual molecules in the air. Dr. Zeiler explained to a frustrated General Thal during one briefing. They see the entire composition, the intention, the emotion. We only see the sound waves. Then how do we see the symphony? Thal demanded, his patience wearing thin. Zeiler pointed to the luminous circle that had been the final image transmitted by the humans. This symbol, we believe it represents their core principle, perhaps a concept of unity or wholeness, and the question, is not asking about our identity, but about our alignment with this principle. Under intense pressure, the Zylosian scientists began to experiment. Their attempts to mimic the unifier's effect or the query's analysis proved catastrophic. Early prototypes of conceptual disruptors either did nothing or caused localized reality distortions that unmade entire research labs. Not with explosions, but with a silent, terrifying erasure, much like the Iron Vanguard. The Zylosians learned quickly that understanding humanity's principles, without truly being them, was a dangerous game. Months turned into a year. The Concordance was stagnating. Their once-proud expansion had halted. Their military might now seem like a child's toy against an invisible, incomprehensible force. Fear, subtle but pervasive, permeated every level of Zylosian society. Emperor Varkos grew increasingly impatient. "We need a breakthrough," he roared during a council meeting. "If we cannot master their understanding, how do we defend ourselves? How do we rebuild our pride?" Dr. Zeiler, now gaunt and perpetually stressed, offered a new approach. "My Emperor, we cannot replicate their understanding from the outside. We must approach it from within. We must attempt to live as they do, to adopt their cognitive processes. We must simulate their extreme environment adaptiveness." This radical proposal was met with shock. To abandon their millennia of structured, logical thought, to embrace the chaotic, intuitive thought processes of a Category 3 species. It was heresy. "How?" asked a bewildered counselor. "Through immersion," Zeiler explained, his voice gaining a strange intensity. "We will select a group of our brightest minds, our most adaptable individuals. We will construct a simulated extreme environment, a harsh world similar to humanity's origin. We will subject them to conditions of constant adversity, of unpredictable variables, of the need to find deeper patterns for survival. We will force them to evolve their understanding as humanity did." Despite profound skepticism and internal resistance, Emperor Varkos, desperate for any solution, authorized the project. Codenamed Project Genesis, it was a last-ditch effort to bridge the conceptual chasm that separated them from humanity. A remote, uninhabited planet was chosen, designated New Sol. Complex environmental simulators were deployed, recreating Earth's volatile weather patterns, its unpredictable geology, its precarious biological ecosystems. Selected Xylosian subjects, volunteers and conscripts alike, were stripped of their advanced technology and immersed in this artificial harsh world. They were forced to build their own shelters from rudimentary materials, forage for sustenance, and navigate a world designed to constantly test their adaptability. The results were initially disastrous. Many subjects perished from exposure, from encounters with engineered fauna, or simply from the psychological breakdown of being stripped of their ordered reality. Yet a small percentage, the most resilient, began to show peculiar changes. Their logical problem-solving began to intertwine with intuitive leaps. Their fear responses became less about panic and more about heightened awareness. They began to notice subtle patterns in chaos, to derive solutions from seemingly disconnected elements. On Xylos Prime, the scientists monitoring Project Genesis watched with a mixture of hope and horror. The neural activity of the surviving subjects began to mirror patterns observed in the human brain projections from the query. They were, in a crude, forced way, beginning to understand. One subject, a Xylosian xenobotanist named Vorlag, became a focal point. Weeks into the simulation, after a particularly devastating engineered storm had defeated his meager shelter and food supplies, Vorlag did not despair. Instead, sensor readings showed a sudden surge in his neural pathways, a cascade of interconnected insights. He didn't just rebuild his shelter, he redesigned it, incorporating principles of wind resistance and water channeling he had intuitively deduced from observing the storm's natural flow. He didn't just forage, he began to cultivate, using a complex understanding of the engineered ecosystem's microclimates that defied standard Xylosian agricultural principles. "He's learning," Dr. Xyler whispered in awe, watching Vorlag's projected neural patterns. "He's not just adapting, he's evolving his understanding." But this evolution came at a cost. Vorlag, when brought back for periodic evaluation, was profoundly changed. He no longer communicated in the structured, logical Xylosian syntax. His mandibles clicked in complex, nonlinear sequences. His optical clusters seemed to perceive multiple layers of reality simultaneously. He saw symphonies where other Xylosians saw only sound waves. He began to describe the universe in terms of interconnected narratives and intentions rather than discrete facts and forces. He was understanding, but he was no longer conventionally Xylosian. Emperor Varkos was shown the unsettling results. "Is this the answer?" he asked, pointing to Vorlag's complex neural display. "To become like them?" "Perhaps," Raxus conceded, "but humanity's understanding seems to come with a transformation that alters the very essence of being. It is not just knowledge, but a state of existence." Then a new, unprecedented event occurred. On the Xylosian Empire's furthest, long-abandoned research outpost, located far from the Sol system, a strange energy signature flared. It was faint, barely registrable, but its pattern was unlike anything the Xylosians had ever encountered. It was not a weapon. It was not a communication. It was a resonance. The signature pulsed, growing stronger. It began to interact with the latent quantum fields of the desolate outpost, causing strange, subtle distortions in spacetime. Automated sensor buoys, designed to withstand millennia, began to flicker and fail, not from power loss, but as if their very purpose was being questioned. Admiral Raxus immediately dispatched a scout vessel to investigate, strictly under orders not to approach too closely. The scout ship, the Vigilant, reached the coordinates. Its reports were chilling. The outpost was gone, not defeated, not erased like the Iron Vanguard, but disassembled. Its constituent molecules, its very atomic structure, had been gently pulled apart, leaving behind only a perfectly spherical void. And in the center of that void, a single minuscule point of light pulsed, emanating the strange resonance. "It's a demonstration," Dr. Zeiler murmured, watching the Vigilance live feed from the Hall of Perpetual Command. "They are showing us the next level of understanding. They are not just unmaking, but breaking down to the fundamental components. They're showing us how to recreate." The pulsing light in the void shifted. It began to emit a steady, rhythmic sequence of modulated frequencies. The Vigilance comms officers struggled to interpret it. It's a blueprint, Admiral," the comms officer stammered, his voice filled with awe. "A conceptual diagram. It's showing us the fundamental structure of reality." On the main view screen, the pulsing light resolved into a complex, multidimensional geometric construct, shimmering with impossible colors and patterns. It was the blueprint of a universe, or perhaps the blueprint for unmaking one. And within its core, at the very heart of the intricate design, was the luminous circle, the human symbol. Then, a new transmission arrived from the light, not audio, not text, but a direct, conceptual injection into the minds of every Xylosian in the Empire who had been exposed to the query. Admiral Raxus staggered, his mind flooded with a rush of abstract data, a sudden, overwhelming comprehension of universal mechanics that defied all Xylosian science. He saw the universe as a vast, malleable construct built upon principles that could be understood and thus manipulated. The message wasn't a warning. It was an invitation. "This is not a weapon," a calm, resonant voice echoed directly within Raxus's mind, speaking in the common galactic tongue, but with a depth that transcended mere sound. "This is a key. The previous fleet was simply a removal of fundamental misunderstandings. The reconnaissance fleet was an analysis of your current capacity for a deeper understanding. This is the next lesson. The Xylosian Concordance seeks to rule the galaxy by force," the voice continued, unwavering. "But the true masters of the universe do not exert force. They simply comprehend its workings. We have given you a glimpse. The choice is now yours, to learn, to truly understand, and perhaps to evolve, or to persist in your limited reality and risk being untangled." The geometric construct on the screen pulsed one last time, then dissolved into the luminous circle, which expanded rapidly, filling the entire view screen with its soft, inviting light. Then it too faded, leaving only the desolate void. Admiral Raxus stood trembling, his mind reeling from the conceptual download. He looked at Emperor Varkos, his optical clusters wide with a terrifying new clarity. "My Emperor," Raxus whispered, his voice hoarse, "they haven't just defeated us. They've offered us a path, a way to transcend our own limitations." "And if we refuse?" Varkos asked, his voice barely audible. Raxus looked at the empty void where the outpost had been, then back at the bewildered faces of his counselors. "Then I believe," he said, the words heavy with a dreadful certainty, "we will simply cease to exist. Not because they will fight us, but because we will fail to understand how to continue." The Xylosian Concordance, masters of galactic conquest, now faced a choice that would redefine their very existence. Embrace a truth that shattered their known universe, or face an end that defied conventional destruction. The luminous circle and the chilling conceptual blueprint hung in their collective consciousness, a silent, profound challenge. The humans hadn't sent another ship. They had sent a lesson. And the question now was, could the Xylosians pass the cosmic exam? Did you know that the Xylosian Concordance's average lifespan is 3 times that of a human? Yet they never once considered that some forms of understanding might accelerate beyond a linear timeline. What do you think the Xylosians will choose? Will they truly understand? Or will they resist a truth that unknits their reality? Let us know your thoughts in the comments, and hit that subscribe button to catch part 4 and see if the Zylosian Concordance can untangle this ultimate challenge. The Cosmic Blueprint, a dazzling, multidimensional geometric construct, shimmered in the minds of every Zylosian touched by humanity's conceptual injection. It was a symphony of fundamental forces, a visual language describing the very fabric of existence, and at its heart, the luminous circle pulsed with an undeniable invitation. Admiral Raxus, still reeling from the download, felt the profound clarity it imparted. It was not mere knowledge. It was an intuitive knowing, a sudden, terrifying comprehension of how everything was interwoven, how seemingly solid objects were merely complex arrangements of underlying principles. Emperor Varkos, witnessing the profound shift in his most senior officers, felt a chill deeper than any cosmic void. He saw the awe, the terror, and the dawning enlightenment in their eyes. This was not a weapon that shattered ships or bodies. This was a truth that shattered paradigms. "My Emperor," Archlibrarian Rylos whispered, his numerous eyes fixed on the empty space where the outpost had been, "they have not given us a choice of battle, but a choice of being. To remain as we are, or to become something more." General Thal, however, still clung to the old ways. "This is a trick, a psychological assault. They seek to dismantle us from within. We must purge this understanding from our minds. We must fortify, build, destroy." But his words, once powerful, now rang hollow in the hall of perpetual command. The other counselors, touched by the conceptual blueprint, merely looked at him with a strange pity. Thal's worldview, once absolute, now seemed simplistic, a child's understanding of a boundless universe. "Destroy what, General?" Emperor Varkos asked, his voice low, his optical clusters fixed on the image of the luminous circle that now seemed etched into his very perception. "How can one destroy a concept? How can one defeat an invitation to evolve?" The Emperor knew. The Concordance was at a precipice. To cling to their rigid, force-based philosophy was to guarantee their downfall, not through conflict, but through irrelevance. The humans, or whatever cosmic entity had acted through them, had not waged war. They had simply presented a mirror, showing the Zylosians the limitations of their own reflection. For days, the Zylosian leadership debated, their arguments shifting from rage to fear to a reluctant acceptance. Admiral Raxus and Dr. Zyler presented their findings from Project Genesis, the bizarre cognitive evolution of subjects like Vorlag. They argued that humanity's understanding wasn't about technology, but about a fundamental shift in perception, born from a harsh evolutionary crucible. It was not a weapon to be wielded, but a lens through which to perceive reality. "The question, are you?" was not rhetorical, Raxus explained, his voice gaining a new, quiet authority. It was an assessment. Are we coherent? Are we adaptable? Are we capable of truly seeing the universe as an interwoven whole, rather than a collection of separate parts to be conquered? Emperor Varkos paced the hall, his massive form casting long shadows. He remembered the unmaking of the Iron Vanguard, the invasive query of the reconnaissance fleet, the unsettling conceptual blueprint. There had been no demands, no ultimatums, just demonstrations. The Zylosians were not being punished, they were being instructed. And the lesson was clear: evolve or be bypassed by the cosmos itself. Finally, the Emperor made his decision. It was the most monumental decree in the Zylosian Concordance's long history, one that would redefine their civilization. "We will not retaliate," Emperor Varkos declared, his voice firm, echoing through the chamber. "We will not seek to conquer this understanding, we will seek to attain it." A collective gasp filled the hall. General Thal sputtered, but was quickly silenced by a dismissive gesture from the Emperor. "Our empire was built on force, on the belief that might makes right," Varkos continued, turning to face his counselors. "But there is a greater might, the might of comprehension. We will dismantle our fleets not in defeat, but in transformation. We will redirect our resources, our intellect, our very societal structure towards this new path. The implications were staggering. The Xylosian Concordance, once the terror of the galaxy, would cease its expansion. Its vast war machine would be repurposed. Dreadnoughts would become mobile research stations. Weapons factories would be converted into centers for conceptual study. The military would be retrained, not as conquerors, but as explorers of consciousness, seeking the deeper patterns that humanity had glimpsed. Project Genesis, initially a desperate, last-ditch effort, was expanded into a monumental societal initiative. New Sol became a sprawling campus where Xylosians from all walks of life would immerse themselves in simulated harsh environments, not to suffer, but to foster adaptable, intuitive minds. The goal was not to make them human, but to cultivate within them the capacity for the same profound understanding that humanity possessed. There was resistance, of course. Traditionalists railed against the heresy of abandoning their martial heritage. Some pockets of the military attempted to defy the Emperor's orders, seeking to launch rogue attacks on the Sol system. But these efforts were quickly put down, not by brute force, but by the quiet, overwhelming authority of an emperor who had seen a truth that transcended all prior notions of power. And in the silence of the void, humanity watched. No further transmissions were sent from the Sol system. No ships emerged. They had presented their lesson, and now they observed the Xylosian response. Their presence was a quiet, profound hum in the background of galactic consciousness, a silent sentinel of a different kind of evolution. Years turned into decades, then centuries. The Xylosian Concordance underwent a profound transformation. Their once gleaming, utilitarian cities began to incorporate organic, flowing designs, reflecting their new focus on interconnectedness. Their technology, once solely focused on power and conquest, began to integrate principles of quantum resonance and conceptual manipulation, not for destruction, but for creation and harmony. Their redesigned vessels, now known as understanding probes, traveled the galaxy not to conquer, but to observe, to learn, and occasionally to offer aid. When they encountered other species locked in conflict, they no longer intervened with force. Instead, they would transmit subtle conceptual vibrations, presenting patterns of interconnectedness, offering glimpses of the underlying fragility of conflict itself. Sometimes it worked, sometimes it did not. But the Xylosians, patient and persistent, understood that true evolution was a slow, deliberate process. The Xylosian Empire, once feared, was now regarded with curiosity and respect. Their history of conquest became a cautionary tale, a testament to the limitations of a purely material worldview. They had become guardians of a new philosophy, one rooted in comprehension rather than coercion. Emperor Varkos, in his final years, would often stand in the rejuvenated hall of perpetual command, now filled with swirling holographic models of conceptual constructs and multidimensional energy flows. He saw the future of his people, not as conquerors of star systems, but as cultivators of cosmic wisdom. He saw the vastness of the universe, not as territory to be claimed, but as an infinite tapestry of understanding to be explored. And occasionally, when a Xylosian understanding probe encountered a species on the cusp of stellar expansion, or one locked in destructive conflict, a subtle, almost imperceptible message would be transmitted from the Sol system. Not to the Xylosians, but to the nascent civilizations themselves. A simple, luminous circle. And a single, profound question that echoed across the void, an invitation to a different kind of reality. Are you? For the Xylosian Concordance had learned its lesson. Their interaction with humanity, or the force that humanity represented, had fundamentally reshaped their destiny. The vast galactic empires, built on force and fear, now looked to the reformed Xylosians with a mixture of awe and unease. For the Xylosians had been shown a truth, not by a fleet of thousands, but by the silent, profound wisdom that resided in just one ship. And in the end, that one ship had been more than enough to change an entire galaxy. It had simply presented a mirror, and the reflection had been a choice, to understand or to be untangled. The Xylosian Concordance had chosen understanding, and in doing so had found not conquest but true power, a power born not of force but of profound cosmic coherence. And the universe, vast and indifferent, now had a new, quiet guardian, one that remembered the silent lesson of Earth, a world that understood how to simply be. If you were captivated by this epic finale and the Xylosian Concordance's monumental transformation, then you've just experienced the power of humanity. Heck yeah, stories. Don't let your cosmic journey end here. Like this video if you were blown away by the Xylosian's ultimate choice, and subscribe to our channel for more tales that redefine galactic power. Tell us in the comments, what was your favorite moment from this entire four-part saga, and what do you think the Xylosians will discover next in their quest for understanding? Your support helps us bring more incredible HFY narratives to life.